Hello. Today I would like to show you my helmetless Spark character that I've been playing over the past several weeks. I like this character so much that I've done over 1,000 maps, lots of T17s, and I've farmed 10 mirrors over that time. And with all that currency, I've made a very expensive character in Standard League. But since a lot of people aren't super excited about looking at the gear of a 10 mirror legacy standard character, I'll first start off by showing a POB of an in-league Spark character that is very close to the same playstyle and points of investment of this character. So if you're going to play a Spark character, there's really only one thing Spark excels at nowadays. Since it's been nerfed several times, there's other spell skills that do more damage, there's other spell skills that do way better on a lower budget, but Spark still excels at hitting things off screen. And so for that reason, I believe that Widowhail is basically required because it allows you to get a ton of projectile speed. And so if you combine a 250 Widowhail or a high roll with a prod speed implicit and explicit bow, and also you can get very nice other rolls on it like Pierce, which is again multiplied by the Widowhail, then this basically solves the playstyle faults that baseline Spark has. And the reason Spark is so good, at least in the current meta, is tier 17 maps are pretty hard, and the modifiers that you roll, they basically one-shot you if the mobs touch you, unless you have a super tanky character, which I don't necessarily believe is the ideal route you should go down. Like, sure, some content creators say that you need 100 million DPS and 100k max hit to do T17s. That is 1000% not the case, as I've demonstrated in my previous videos, where I clear tier 17 maps in under 2 minutes, and I have like a max hit of 10k. Elemental hit is still pretty high because it's harder to avoid some of those abilities while mapping, but yeah, those are definitely not needed. This setup will easily do tier 17s, so that's the prod speed and pierce fix that will make your Spark do really well. Alongside that, a mode of investment that I cannot do on my standard character is duration, which the non-legacy character specs into both duration nodes. The reason for this is because if you don't know how Spark works, Spark hits every 0.66 seconds, and so the longer duration your Spark is, the more potential hits that it can do on a single cast. And so I have enough investment into duration for Spark to hit 6 times, and the more proj speed you have, the higher chance that those projectiles will be under your target every 0.66 seconds. So proj speed and duration are actually a DPS increase, so we invest in those. Some other things that are basically semi-required for this character, which I've focused this on farming tier 17s, is again, we're trying to nullify a lot of the T17 mods. So how I go about that is I have an adorn, and the reason for this is because it multiplies the implicits of magic jewels, which should be fairly abundant in League. So this can very easily make you curse immune, bleed immune, CB immune, poison immune. A lot of the hard modifiers that will destroy your character in tier 17, you only need 2 separate implicits for this to fix it. So this is a double corrupt. This is just like, you're not going to have double corrupt jewels. Just assume that's just as curse immune. But if you have 2 magic jewels that have double curse reduce effect, then you can basically ignore that mod when running T17s and you're good. Same thing with poison. There's a poison mod on your T17 map. Doesn't matter, you're good. So that's why I think Dorn is extremely good. Especially, I mean, this is where we're getting a ton of crit multi and life. So yeah, Adorn, obviously, everyone knows it, really good. I guess I'll talk about the helmetless technology that I run. So not a lot of people use this keystone. I think it's very good. As you can see, our DPS is like 27 million. We take it off, it's 17 million. And the reason for this is because this POB has a little bit higher crit than what is like super optimal, but if you have around 50 crit, which is the most optimal number for lucky to have because it gains the most benefit, if you had 50 crit, it goes to 75 effective crit. And since we are using Spark, and Spark is a lightning skill, then the lucky damage that this node has is amazing, because since lightning damage has such a high roll range, having lucky lightning damage is like really, really good, and then you stack on lucky crit, makes it insane. So this is like a 40% plus multiplier just for your helm slot. In helm slots, since they don't have helmet enchants anymore, this node is way more viable. In going through the rest of the pieces of the gear, again, I already talked about the Widowhail and quiver combo, which is insane for Spark. For the chest, since we don't have any way of getting power charges and frenzy charges, and those are pretty big more multipliers, we get it on the chest. These influence gloves are expensive, but they're broken for Spark, and so you should get them. Since we use Widowhail, we can't have like a bow that has like a ton of plus levels or things like that to juice up our damage. This is more like a quality of life combination with the bow. So all of our damage is going to come through like a whatever 10 link, 11 link from our gloves. Boots, it's just you're getting resist and evasion to cap out 95 evasion. And none of our gear has chaos resist, so we get chaos resist. And then here, your amulet or ring should have a lot of mana rolls on it, because even though we do invest into a decent amount of mana reduction for Spark, because it's a mana intensive skill, one of your, again, rings or amulet should have a ton of either mana regen and mana, so that we can sustain our Spark easily. So that's where I get that. And then just the other, either ring or amulet, you're just, again, getting strength and intellect, so you can equip your gear. Original Sin is basically mandatory unless you want to do less than half the damage when playing a Pathfinder, because your chaos damage is applying wither stacks, and wither stacks make you do like twice as much damage, so that's pretty good. And on top of that, if you stand near an enemy, they have 0 chaos resist, which again counters a lot of T17 maps or rare modifiers that give them extra resistance. We run a Mage Blood because Mage Blood is broken, and our 5th flask is a Life Flask that we run because we are spec'd into Master Surgeon. And Master Surgeon can basically read, you run Righteous Fire for free. And since Righteous Fire is a 40% more multiplier, we run that, and we also anoint Hardened Scars to more easily run Righteous Fire, as it gives us a ton of regen and or less degen, and everything else should be fairly self-explanatory. So now for my standard character. So again, the big difference is that instead of running Spark, I'm running Volspark. And the reason we can run Volspark is because there is a legacy mod that is non-aura Vol skills cost 40% reduced souls. So we have that on our weapon, and on top of that, we run 2 flasks that I cycle in between that give us more soul gain prevention and reduced soul cost. So if I have 150% flask effect, these get boosted to 100% reduced soul gain prevention duration, and with the bow, 100% reduced soul cost. So I can press the flask, and I can spam Spark for as long as the flask is going on. And while it looks like there's a ton more sparks on screen, because there is, because every single time I cast a spark, it casts 100 sparks, if you can see, the damage that a Volspark does versus a spark does is substantial. So it's, 5 times as much damage a normal spark does than a Volspark. So while there are more sparks on screen with Volspark, Spark is still very good. And on top of that, if I'm trying to, this room is closed off, so Volspark is going to be really good because every single one of the sparks can hit the spark. It's not limited by the 0.66 seconds. But if you're in an open area and or you're trying to target a mob over here off screen, if I'm using Volspark, a lot of my projectiles will be going in this direction. So even though I'm casting 100 sparks, I'm losing 30, 40, 50, 70% of the sparks, depending on the walls of the room and bounces. So, no, Volspark is not 10 times better than Spark. I don't know. In certain scenarios, it could be 3 times as good. Again, if this room was closed off and there was a boss in the middle, and I could spam Volspark, it would hit it like a little shit ton of time, like 70 times every cast. But those scenarios in-game are are fairly few and far between, and you don't really need that much damage. Like, I would probably do 200 million DPS in this room with Volspark, and I don't need 200 million DPS, so it doesn't necessarily matter if the boss dies in 1 second or 3 seconds. Doesn't really matter. So I guess I'll just show off the other gear that is expensive and mirrored. So here's a legacy bow. It does a lot of damage. Here are some gloves. It doesn't have really anything. It has Quant because it's Standard League and I can afford to get Quant on a lot of these pieces. So I have Quant and Calling Strike. Calling Strike is a more damage multiplier, so I take it. Here is a really good ring. It gives me crit up to 50%, which is, again, with the Helm combo, is insane DPS wise. I have a chest that has the 17% increase Flask applied to you. This helps me get to the 150% that I need to get 100% uptime on Volspark, and it's legacy, so it has a lot of energy shield. I run a Mage Blood because Mage Blood is good. It only has the 3 magic utility flask because I have to run 2 unique flasks. Here are some boots. Again, it's just ES and Quant, basically. Original Sin, because it's required, because if you take this off, I do like 80% less damage. Here's an amulet. Again, it has Quant, crit, and more damage. Extremely good. Like this amulet is insane. And then I have a non-mirrored item. This is my triple implicit, which I lose a little bit of proj speed, but I already have 400%, so it's not a huge issue. But then I just get more proj speed and resistances. And forgot about this. So these Watch Your Eye mods are very, or at least 2 of them, are very important. On my non-legacy version, instead of Discipline, I'm running Vitality, but this line basically makes you unkillable. So I'm getting 27 energy shield every single time I hit a target. And since I hit targets hundreds of times a second, I'm getting like 2,000 plus energy shield per second just because of this mod. And on the non-legacy version, I'm running Vitality mod on a Watcher's Eye, and I run a level 1 Vitality just for that reason. This mod, in my opinion, is basically required because, again, if you're running T17 mods and you have a no regen mod or you have no leech mod, this mod overrides that. So yeah, this mod is like broken insane. Always run it. And the other mod that's really good is the Grace mod. So having 95% evade chance is insane. So if I didn't have this mod, I would get hit every 9 hits that hit me. Having this mod, I only get hit once every 20 hits. So that's kind of being twice as tanky against melee hits, or it doesn't even have to be melee hits, like other hits or projectiles. Yeah, it's just in some scenarios it doubles your tankiness. So very good. So I think I basically covered everything. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll get to them. Thanks.